Hello dear students, welcome to BAJIRAO IAS Academy interview guidance program, and in this lecture we are going to discuss a very important topic, that is recently the government of India or the Union Cabinet had approved to allow 100% FDI in the space sector. So if you look at India's space sector, so there's a straightforward growth in the space sector, especially ISRO had been playing a pioneering role in India's space missions. Now if you look at the recent missions of ISRO, that is Chandrayaan 2 and Chandrayaan 3 and Aditya L1 mission, and also India's efforts to launch Gaganyaan mission by 2025. So if you look at all these missions, they have taken ISRO to earn a lot of reputation and respect at the global space industry. So therefore there's an increasing confidence and trust on India's space economy, space sector. So in fact several other nations and the private companies have been looking towards India as a future space hub, because we have the largest pool of working professionals, and we have also several private companies. For example, I can say Skyroot is a private space company in India. So there is a lot of potential for India for the growth of this private sector, and even not just for the private sector, and also for the FDIs. So therefore this is the right moment that the government had felt that there is a need to further liberalize the FDI into the space sector. So that what is the major advantage of introducing or attracting more FDIs in the space sector? It brings in more technology. Into the space sector, and it would also bring more investments in the sense that, so they also provide a lot of employment opportunities for India's young workforce, right? Apart from providing employment opportunities, there is a scope that there will be a healthy competition between the foreign space-based companies and the Indian space-based companies, provided that there's a conducive policy environment that is being provided by the government of India for this purpose. So it is recently in news because Union Cabinet recently approved amendments. So these amendments allowed 100% of FDI into the India's space sector. So therefore this is very, very important. So you have to be you have to pay attention to this. So we'll try and understand some facts with respect to the global space economy, present and future. Now in the year 2020 itself, the global space economy was valued at $447 billion. However, if you look at the value of global space industry by the year 2035, there will be a significant increase in the total value. So it could increase, within a span of 15 years it could increase up to $800 billion, and by 2047 it could reach to $1.5 trillion. So therefore there will be a significant rise and significant increase in the global space industry. So in this context, the government of India had launched the Indian space policy. So keeping in mind the overall space potential and the potential growth rate of the space industry, so this Indian space policy 2022 have come up with different provisions. The size of Indian space economy is around $5 billion. So it is very minute when we compare it with the total global space economy, right? So the total value of India's space economy is just 5 billion. However, the global space policy, Indian space policy 2022 is actually aimed to further expand Indian space economy, right? So 3% of India's contribution to the global space economy. So we can say that it is a very minute amount of contribution for the global space economy. So over 10% estimated contribution, over 10% by 2030, and the compound annual growth rate of Indian space market or space economy is around 48%. So that is a very significant amount of growth rate. So if you look at the percentage of the total GDP of India's space economy, so it is just 0.19%, and it had slipped from 0.26% in 2011-12 to just 0.19%. so that is a very significant drop in India's space economy contribution to overall GDP growth. So the overall objective is to, over a period of time, that Indian space economy would contribute a lot to the India's GDP, and it would also create a lot of employment opportunities and augment our national priorities and national growth imperatives. So for the very same purpose, the government of India had come up with another move, that introducing 100% of FDI in the private sector. Now in this context, we will try to understand some areas in space, and certain aspects will come under the automatic route and the government route. So in the sense, when I say automatic route, it doesn't require any government approval for bringing in FDI in these sectors. So however, when we talk about the government route, so it must require the government approval to introduce the investments into that particular country. So first and foremost, there are few areas, for example, satellite manufacturing and operation, satellite data products, and ground user segment. So in these segments, so the government had clearly mandated that up to 74% there will be automatic route. Okay, so up to 74% there will be automatic route of investment in these sectors. Okay, so there will be no government approval required for this investment. However, if you go beyond 74%, if you invest more than 74% in terms of FDI, it must require the government approval. So therefore you just have to remember this: satellite manufacturing and operation, satellite data products, and ground user segment. So in these segments, or in these categories, so the automatic route and government route is similar to like this. So after that, when we talk about the launch vehicles and associated systems or subsystems, and creation of spaceports for launching and receiving spacecraft, so for these the government had allowed up to 49% of FDI in automatic route, as well as 49% beyond. The government had allowed the government route. Okay, so though you just have to understand this. Okay, so this is with respect to the launch vehicles and associated systems or subsystems, or creation of spaceports for launching and receiving spacecraft. So this essentially means that they will not use the facilities of ISRO, rather they will launch these satellites and launch vehicles from their spaceports alone, right? So after that, there's another category, that is manufacturing of components and systems, subsystems for satellites and ground segment and user segment. So for all these categories, they could use up to 100% of the FDI under the automatic route. Okay, so this essentially includes manufacturing of components and systems, subsystems for satellites and ground segment and user segment. Okay, so for all these segments, or for all these areas in the space, up to 100%, the automatic route FDI is allowed. Okay, so automatic route of FDI is allowed. So after that, we'll try to briefly understand the benefits. There are certain benefits with respect to the introducing of 100% FDI in the space sector. So if you look at India, it is known as attractive destination for the foreign investments. So this is also a reason increasing 100% FDI in space sector would further boost India's space efforts, right? So after that, it would boost the participation of the non-governmental entities in space research, right? So this essentially means that the private parties or the private companies' participation in the India's space research would significantly increase. Now if you look at the space would be the future. So therefore it could significantly increase the private sector participation, and that could also help ISRO to dilute some of its responsibilities to these private space companies, and it could focus on key missions that could benefit the entire nation as well. Now Indian space products can access the global pool of capital because we are allowing 100% FDI. So because of this reason, Indian space products can access the global pool of capital to expand manufacturing and production capacities as well. So these are the major advantages or the benefits with introducing 100% FDI in the space sector. However, the foreign direct investment, when we talk about the foreign direct investment, so it essentially means that it is a type of cross-border investment. So someone from other countries, they have invested in our country, right? So they invest in physical infrastructure, and it also creates a large-scale employment opportunities, and it is also not easy to liquidate their assets if they wanted to wind up entire efforts. So therefore FDI is considered as one of the potential source of economic growth and economic development for countries like India, right? So the cross-border investment, in which an investor from one country establishes a lasting interest in an enterprise in another country. So this is the basic definition of the foreign direct investment, right? So this essentially means that investment not by the domestic private companies, rather foreign private companies, private companies investing in India, keeping in mind India's strong growth potential. So that is essentially FDI. So however, FDI remains vital for bolstering domestic industry, stimulating growth and enhancing the global competitiveness as well. So these are the major advantages that are being associated with the foreign direct investment, and especially allowing 100% FDI in the space sector. So however, over a period of time, the government have to create a conducive policy environment for the private sector. Conducive policy environment for the private sector, right? So that also includes the foreign direct investments. So therefore there's no doubt that India could grow in a robust fashion in the space economy and space sector. So therefore there is a need for sustained push in the longer term to ensure that this particular measure would give solid results on this front. Okay, so that's it in this lecture, and thank you.